welcome to the latest episode of the Claw's Corner. On this episode, you get two great guests for the price of one. Making her second appearance on the show is indie author, poet, and artist Sharon Arsego. She released her first book, Cadence, Poems, in April 2023. She followed that with Behind the Blue, Poetry and Prose in May of 2024. I thought to myself, how could she ever top that? Never one to disappoint, she teamed up with my other guest, Wendy Tobin, the silence photographer, to create my new favorite book, Scenes and Sonnets. This enchanting interplay of sonnet poetry and stunning photography invites readers to explore the beauty of the world through a unique lens. So please welcome the new dynamic duo, indie author, poet, and artist, Sharon Arsego, along with the silence photographer, Wendy Tobin, to the Claw's Corner. I'm no psychic, but I have a feeling that Wendy will not be silenced for long. I don't know, I'm just... Wendy, welcome to the show. Sharon, welcome back to the show. So great to have both of you on.
Thank you, Rich.
So let's get started with the collaboration. As I mentioned in the intro, your book that you did together, it's your first collaboration, Scenes and Sonnets. So let's talk about how that came together and where you found each other and what it's all about.
I'm actually going to just toss this to Wendy first, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have known about it. So Wendy, I'll let you start and I'll pick up when you're ready.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah, so I've been a photographer for 40 years, and I took a break because for about 22 years, because I have a child with Down syndrome that I had to take care of for quite a while, until she became an adult. So I started getting back into the photography as she was going through her her adolescence and stuff, and it was quite traumatic for both of us. So it just became an outlet. And I started doing a lot of stuff on Twitter in the beginning, and that's how I was found by another publisher. And that's basically how I became who I am. And on Facebook, I believe, is where Sharon and I met. And what I did is I had announced that I was looking for a few different writers to team up with me on some of the photography books. So that's how we met.
That's right.
Let me talk about you for a minute. So what kind of photography, what kind of photos do you take? Pictures of scenery, of nature?
Yeah, currently it's been mostly wildlife this past year. But previous to that, most of what's in Sharon's book is just scenic stuff. All of New England, and some of Connecticut, there's some of New Hampshire, there's some of Massachusetts. So a lot of people call me the New England photographer.
Well, I want to get to why they call you the silence photographer in a moment, but what is the coolest thing that you ever had wildlife-wise? What's that you ever captured on camera?
Oh my goodness, there's probably been several things, but over the past year, I mean, you can even go to my Facebook page and see for yourself, are just some of the amazing swan photos in flight and them chasing each other. Nothing but wings and all kinds of water just being flown up in the air. It's so amazing. It's like sometimes I've been in tears because it brings so much joy.
Do you sit there for hours just waiting for the perfect shot?
Hours, sometimes 10, 12, 13,
No.
and wiped out at the end. Very wiped out, but so worth it.
Oh yeah, one of the most things I would love to see, and I've only seen once walking through the woods, and it freaked me out at first. I didn't know what it was, but I love owls. Have you ever captured any owls in nature?
I have captured some, but nothing that I would share, just because the lighting was not good. It was as dusk was coming, and it just was not good. But I'm actually starting to look for the snowy owls, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to capture some of those. Those are a big hit in this area, and the photographers that know where they are, they will not tell you where they are. So you have to literally go scouting.
Come on, nobody's listening. You could tell us. You're just with friends. Come on. So, all right. Well, don't tell me where the snowy owls are, but where do you go and place them? Just using this as an example, like Sessions Woods in Burlington, Litchfield White Memorial Foundation. Do you go to places like that and just walk the trails looking for things?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The current place that I've been at is in Woburn, and it's called Horn Pond. It's an amazing place with a lot of amazing people. I can't tell you. It's one of the most welcoming places that I've ever been here in Massachusetts, and yeah, and they know what I'm doing, so so many people are behind it with good wishes. So I've been very thankful.
All right. So now let's solve this mystery. You said you're sometimes known as New England photographer, but according to my intro, you're known as the silence photographer. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's a couple of reasons. I'll tell you the only reason that should air. How's that? Meta has this thing about they'll boost your account for a while and then all of a sudden you get complete dead. And I'm sure Sharon knows how that works on Facebook as well. You'll be doing so well for a long time and then all of a sudden your page will just go completely dead.
Hmm.
And it could be months that way. And it's like we have no reach, we can't get new followers. And in a business like mine and Sharon's, you have to have those followers.
Oh yeah.
That's where our reach is. So right now my account's doing well, I will say.
So
How long? I don't.
is this just a hobby for you? Or is this your job?
No, this is my career.
Wow. Right. Well,
And I'm also an illustrator. So yeah,
oh,
so I'm also
oh,
an illustrator. So
right. Well, we'll get to it at the end, but tell my viewers where they can find some of your stuff.
so right now the biggest platform that I would say where most of my stuff is on the Silence Photographer on Facebook.
Yep. And I looked at that. I loved your photos. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yep. And speaking of beautiful, Sharon, we all know what a great writer you are. I've known you,
Thank
I think
you.
it's been going on 2 years. I met you at an open mic. You
Hmm.
did your poetry, and I've been a fan and friend ever since. I love your stuff. I've had the first two books, love them. So when I know she told me that how you two met each other,
Sure.
but did you write the book first and then went searching for or did you look at the photographs and then write from her photos?
So Wendy was so gracious, and I just got to share, for first time collaboration, you're really kind of, I've never met in person. It's actually the first time here that we've seen each other's face. We've emailed and we had a phone call going over the book, but you kind of taking a chance in some ways. And I knew she had done at least one other collaboration I was aware of with another poet. And she explained to me how she wanted to do this, and I thought it was wonderful to give me such creative um, reign with it. So she provided with me easily 50 photographs, easily,
Wow.
maybe slightly less. And she offered me to pick out whichever 20 I wanted to use. And I took my time because they're all so beautiful. And it's not just beautiful, they're striking. So as this airs, I'm hoping to have, the cover photo of the book, which is a beautiful little bumblebee nosediving into a coneflower. And they're just striking. The colors are so vibrant. I'm actually am getting my own copy soon to show people, but my cousin bought one and I saw it over Thanksgiving and it oohs and ahs through the whole place how proud we should both be, Wendy, really about this book and just how gorgeous the colors are. It's a 7x7 book. So and I saw the hardcover, so it's just beautiful. But she said, pick your 20 pictures. I got to choose how the name of the book. I got to choose the front and back photos of which of the selections. And then when I picked the photos, I thought, well, if it's going to be 20 and then 20 one poem per photo, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to write a sonnet for each one. Now, I haven't written a sonnet, Rich, 30 years,
Wow.
college, 32. And I thought, sure, why not? Because,
Yeah,
and
what the
then
hell?
I researched sonnets because I thought it's been a while. So there's, traditional Italian, all these other styles, and then now there's the modern sonnet. So the main key thing is that there's 14 lines and it's a whole thing, iambic pentameter and the whole thing. I won't bore anyone, but there's a rhyming scheme. And so I did that through some of them, and then I started getting a little loose with it, but I still felt it carried it through the 14 lines. And so Scenes and Sonnets was born. And so as I looked at each photo, I thought, does that strike a chord with me? And there were some that weren't as strong as others, and the 20 that we came up with are the ones that really hit home for me. Some are very personal. I make a reference. There's one about with a sunflower.
Hmm.
It is actually just a sunflower by itself. And my dad put them around the garden. He was a master gardener, vegetables mostly, and he would put them around the garden. The birds would come for those seeds and not bother his plantings. And that actually is incorporated, as well as my neighbors here growing them every summer. And so I incorporated, it's very personal. I brought personal things into the poems. And that's, I'm actually really, I mean, I've written 3 now, and I'm just really proud of this one. Very proud.
Well, you should be proud of all 3. They're all great. And
I am, but this one really strikes a chord.
well, there's a review that came in. I want to read that for my viewers. It said, "This
Oh,
would be my mother's favorite book. It's so serene, like when I stop on a walk and reflect on my surroundings."
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's from
I
that.
love that.
That really touched me. That was really great to hear, because that's kind of how I felt. I felt like Wendy gave me a view of something. I picked mostly, the nature ones.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I get a chance to reflect on what if I stopped here and saw that. Kind of like there's one of daisies, which are my favorite flower, and just, a butterfly. And what's cool too is like the cover's a bumblebee with his nose in the coneflower.
Yeah.
And I wrote the poem for that. The sonnet is actually speaking to the bumblebee. I have it here if you'd like to hear it.
I would.
Hopefully we will match this with the photo when you do the final cut. But let me bring this around because yeah, my eyes are failing. So try to picture, it won't do it justice till you see it. You got the fuzzy little bumblebee head first into a coneflower. And this is me talking to the bee. Hey there, you busy little bee. Not sure if you hear or even see me. Your fuzzy face is so focused on that bloom. Thank you for the crucial work you do. Though honey is the sweetest of rewards, and your hive must be fully stocked and stored, I wonder what you think of as you fly, as you find the flowers where you stop by. Do you long for your humming honeycomb? Do you feel blessed to bring your bounty home? What would the world eat if not for the bee? What about the wildflowers that grow freely? I watch in awe with appreciation. We owe the bees our lives and protection.
I love it.
It's one of my favorite ones.
Oh, is it? I love it too because it starts off the book and it's the cover photo. And
Yeah.
it's I was doing some research too. I researched, there's a picture of a beautiful birch tree, and I love birch trees. I always have, maybe because they just stand out from the rest, right? And I did
Mhm.
research before I wrote the poem. I said, well, what are some of the traits of a birch tree? I learned a lot. They're hardy, and some other cool things I didn't know. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. I've always loved birch trees, and how am I like a birch tree? And it just that's how that poem ended up coming about. So that's how it worked out.
I'm curious, how long does it take you to write a sonnet or a poem? Like, how many drafts do you go through before you finally say, "This is exactly how I want it"?
So I'm gonna be straight up with you. It doesn't take long once I get going.
Hmm.
I let stuff simmer, and so I don't rhyme a lot. Like in Cadence and Behind the Blue, there's not a whole lot of rhyming. So that was the other challenge, because sonnets usually requires rhyming. And then when you go more modern sonnet, it's not as necessary. Uh, but so I kind of get into a flow,
Yeah.
and then I might look at it again and make some changes, and then I realize some edits need to be done, but it usually comes pretty smoothly for me. Yeah.
That's impressive. Within, I'd say, the last year, you've been on a creative high. I mean, I look at your Facebook and you're nonstop with all these different things you're coming out with.
Yeah, it's a lot. I can't even keep up with myself sometimes. I think we were all talking about that before
Yeah.
we started. We're like chasing our tails, but we're making progress. You know, Wendy's doing all these wonderful swan photos and illustrations. I mean, her drawings are wonderful. You're doing all your shows, and you know, I have stuff kicking off too. So
Yeah. We're all keeping busy and all good things coming out, and I love it. So, do
Definitely.
you have a future collaboration since this one went so well?
Wendy's told me when I'm ready, um, you know, we would work on it.
We've
So
talked about it, yes.
yeah, we have talked about it. I will say this started July of 23, and then it went into the fall. I didn't start it right away. And then I had my health stuff and things.
Yeah.
So we got this rolling where it came out in October, I believe. And I just, let me just tell you, it's a perfect gift.
Mhm.
It's hardcover and paperback now, exclusively on Amazon. And it's 7x7. It makes a gorgeous gift, any occasion. But if you're looking for holiday stuff, or I'm telling you, it makes a great bedside table book, coffee table book, end table book. If you have someone special like a teacher or someone you work with, honestly, I would love to get a book like this. I'm not just saying that. I think it's really gorgeous.
Well, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas. And mom, if you're watching, you know what I want
Right,
for Christmas.
right.
I love it. Well, you mentioned that your book is exclusively on Amazon. I want to talk to you about Swirl Ink Publications. What's that?
So swirlink Publications is my publication company. It's really just for me. And when I register my ISBN, so Wendy has publication rights to Scenes and Sonnets, which it was part of the deal, and I love that. And so when I do my own books, like Behind the Blue, which I have here, Behind the
Mhm.
Blue, and Cadence,
Mhm.
these are when I register the ISBN, which is a required number for any book being published. I register under Swirl Ink Publication, so I pay for the ISBN instead of getting a free one, which limits my distribution and my publication name. And Swirl Ink, it's INK. So my mom taught me when I was little to keep me occupied. She would have a like a regular sized piece of paper, give me a crayon. I go by Sherry when I was, by family. So Sherry, take your crayon, start in one point, don't lift it up and just draw all over the page. And
Mhm.
you definitely want to, overlap the lines. And then when I was done, she's like, okay, now color in wherever there's, say it was it looked like a oval or a square or whatever. And that's just how one of the things I did was to pass the time. She kept me busy. And then as I got older and COVID hit, I started sketching for a global art project that was based out of New York at the time. And I started drawing. The first thing I did was the swirls because
Yeah.
that's what I knew. And then as things developed, I thought, well, if I'm going to publish now, I want to call it something. Kind of had swirl ink in my brain for a long time. And also, so it covers my drawing and then, also my writing.
And what year was that
I
established?
actually love that name.
Oh, do you? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. It's
that's
Thanks.
great.
simple, but
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
yeah,
What I love about you, Sharon, is that everything that you had, like swirling publications, your poems, your sonnets, everything is so personal and it tells a story and there's a great story behind it and where it came from. So like everything to you, is there any in your sonnets and your poems, is there any just one that's complete fiction or does it all come from life experiences or growing up?
I would say the ones like we talked in my first interview with you earlier this year, the Madeline Langle, were not my personal experience. It was
Yeah.
written, anything related to her was written based on when I did my senior paper
Oh
and
yeah.
senior poem. But everything else is it's got a very personal bent on it, especially Behind the Blue. I'm sure that was more introspective than anything.
Oh yeah, no, I think that makes the book so much more special when you're reading it. It's almost like
Thanks.
just reading it, you get to know who you really are. I love that.
Yeah, it's a little scary, I have to admit, putting that out there. I don't know with Wendy, if you know, when you take photographs, how do you feel in terms of like, do you sense a connection in some way that comes through?
Oh my goodness. Like I don't have to do anything. My heart just leads me where I go.
Hmm.
Um, you know, as a photographer, any photographer, especially professional, you know, people will view our work and say, wow, that was a amazing photograph. Yeah, you know how many I had to take in order to get that one wow?
Exactly.
So it's not easy to do that, you know, unless you know how photography works. Um, but I did want to say to you, Sharon, there's one sonnet in that book that I meant to mention to you that it's so funny the way you wrote it, and I can't remember the name of it, but maybe as I'm describing, you'll know
Okay.
which one I'm talking about. It was your sonnet about a cemetery.
Oh, yes, I love that
Um,
one.
and how you got that right, I have no idea, but that photo that I took was in a cemetery.
I saw the little,
It was
so Rich,
amazing.
thank you. When we give you the pictures, I'll make sure you get this one so you can reference it.
Yeah.
Um, this is a very, I'm
Yeah.
looking for it. I'm scrolling through. Where is it? Oh, I went too
It's
far.
like in the middle of the book somewhere. And
Yeah.
it's the photo of the it's like a little waterfall and a lot of
Yes.
greenery with a bunch of lily pads
Here it
and
is.
uh,
So the one with the cemetery is where it says this, the sun sets and rises.
yes.
That's one. So this is gorgeous because it's sort of like a, you'll see it when you get the photo up, Rich, it's like this hazy, sort of a hazy sky. I don't know if it's a mist or the sun is up high, almost at the top of the trees. And I saw this, the cemetery stones are set back, but I saw them and then there's this open field leading to them. So I'm going to read the piece because honestly, this one,
Yeah.
I don't know where this came from. This just, it spoke to me. And also, um, as a photographer, Wendy works with moving
Hmm.
material, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially wildlife or even nature. If there's running water, like she has some waterfalls and things, that moment is that moment. When you're writing, it's all here. I don't want to do this because I look crazy, but it's all here. and and it's stationary for it's contained, right? So you're taking a very moving art and a more stationary art, and I think melding them together can be tricky, but I just feel really blessed. I'm really, really pleased with. So when we send you the photo, this is the poem that goes with it. Let me just shrink this a little bit so I can read it better. Okay. The sun sets and rises on both the young and the old. Whether waking or sleeping, the days and nights continue as clockwork, as per season, per solstice, as per ritual. Here, where I once stood mourning you, my love, with dark grief even at the height of day, or bright memories in the deepest night, with tears of despair, bittersweet smiles exchanged in silence, with others missing their hearts too, with hurt so sharp it stabbed my lungs, forcing me to my knees. Here now our fates have aligned, my dear one. My final rest is shared with you, side by side again, for whatever eternity may be. The sun sets and rises, the days and nights continue, only now we share them from the same side of the veil.
Wow. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I
And
have.
when you see that picture, I mean, it's otherworldly in my opinion. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. I love cemeteries myself. So where was this picture
Oh,
taken?
yes.
Yes, you know all about that. Was it taken in Connecticut or Massachusetts?
Massachusetts and the Berkshires.
Okay.
Oh,
Is there any story behind that cemetery? Because there are some more famous or should I say infamous cemeteries in Connecticut, like where Stepney Cemetery, where supposedly the White Lady is, or Burlington, where the Green Lady is. Do you have any stories for that cemetery?
I don't. Unfortunately, I didn't do any kind of research on it. It
Okay.
was just a town that I had passed by and I needed to get something different, and that's where I ended up. It's a pretty awesome place. It's like beautifully eerie.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe that's where I picked up on that, where there's, mentioning
The
the other side of
beautifully
the
eerie.
veil. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Well, it has that again, it has this sort of next other dimension to it. There's something very different about it. And
Yes,
I feel like,
definitely.
yeah, I feel like those gravestones are on the older side, maybe.
Yeah, they
Um,
are
yeah.
extremely old. It's a Catholic cemetery, and
Mm,
I just happened, to go by it, and it has a big, huge stone archway as you're just passing by this residential area, and it's like right in the middle. I'm like,
mm.
it's it's a strange place to put a cemetery because
Yes,
there's houses on both sides, and you
right.
go through this big, beautiful archway it's like made out of stone,
Mm.
and it's almost like a tunnel, and what
Oh,
makes the tunnel are the trees. So the archway is
oh,
made out of the stone, and then if you keep going into the
sure.
cemetery a little ways, it's all arched with
Like
trees,
tree-lined arch. Oh,
and then
wow.
yeah, and then it opens up.
Wow.
yeah,
It's
That
so
sounds great.
it's amazing. It's beautiful.
yeah, I definitely
And
can't wait to check
the
that out.
eerie in that photo, yeah, the eerie photo kind of feel with that particular photo was because of all the smoke that was coming from Canada.
Oh,
Uh,
that's the Canada fires.
yep, I
Because it
remember that
doesn't
very well.
seem
Yes.
like just hay. It didn't seem like just fog or haze, but now that makes
No, it
sense.
wasn't. It was quite a bit of smoke. It was almost
Wow.
I was almost unable to breathe because it was so heavy.
Wow.
But amazing. It's amazing what pollution does to the color, and um, for some reason it beautifies things.
Yeah.
Mm,
Uh,
that's interesting.
so there's beauty in chaos.
Mhm. It's a
Imperfectly perfect, right?
good way to put
That's
it.
it.
Do you have your own book of just photos? Wendy, do you have your own book
Uh,
of just photos?
well, I mean, you could say that. I've never done just a photo book
Yeah.
with no words. So my very first photo book was with Rumi quotes. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if you know who Rumi was.
No.
Um, Rumi was a Muslim poet. He had a lot of titles, and I want to say he was born and died in the 1300s.
Hmm.
But if you look, I'm sure that you've seen something online because Rumi is everywhere, and maybe you just didn't know it was his stuff.
That could be it.
And I'm getting ready to do a couple more of his books using my photography because I had thankfully gained some rights to using his work.
And
Yep.
how'd you do
And
that?
Rich, Rumi is spelled Rumi. So
Okay.
a lot of times those quotes are on like shared in memes and things.
Yeah, I probably just
Yes.
like Wendy said, I probably saw
Yep.
it and just didn't connect because I didn't know who it was. I said, oh, wow,
Sure.
that's interesting, and then forgot about it. But
Yeah. So
now
now
that
if
I
you
know
Yeah,
that,
see
there's
it,
some
yeah.
very popular ones you probably are familiar with.
yeah.
You just don't know who it's from.
Well, I'm definitely interested. And do you sell your is that sold on Amazon as well?
It is, yes.
All
Yep.
right, we got to check it out. So back to you, Sharon, because I want to talk about
Okay.
you have the best website. I love that. I was going through that
Oh,
website. I was there for
thanks.
about an hour and a half. Just going through
Yay.
everything. You have the way it's set up is great. So I want to talk about the Swirl Ink Orbit first. What is
Yes.
that? And
So the Swirl Ink Orbit is what I call basically followers or subscribers. Every subscription right now is free, and I expect to keep it that way for a while. I'd really like to grow that audience. I know we talked about growing our audience on online, on Facebook and so on, and how the metaverse sometimes keeps us out of the loop. But I really want to encourage people to sign up. It's an email notification. I write a blog, so it's called About That Artist Life or something like that. I can't remember. I should know, right? And basically when I do a blog entry, it would automatically get emailed to you, or, you know, you can go looking for it, but it'd be like, hey, Sharon just wrote something really funny or smart or whatever. Here's your notification. And then the other thing too is I have the link tree, which is linktr.ee/Sharon Arsego. And you can subscribe there. And that's a dynamic place as well. So for instance, if you want to just find anything about me and you have that address, you find everything. I have my books listed. They link you to wherever you need to buy them from or can buy them from. I have a link to my website, a link to the blog, a link to a few other places, and I can add to it and, you know, make it's dynamic. So either one of those would bring you into the swirling orbit. And just like orbit, you're rotating around, right? These
Yep.
swirl ink items and universe, really. So that's what that is.
Well, I also love that what you just mentioned. You also have indie book reviews, and I love that.
Yes. I need to do more. In fact, that's going to tie in well with the podcast I'm launching in the beginning of next year.
We were going to get
I'm
to that in a
aiming for
minute.
I'm aiming for February, but again, I'm always, you know, locking my stuff up kind of close together because I have my fourth book I'm working on,
Wow.
and I want it to be out in time for Valentine's Day because it's a heartbreak book. So I want it to, you know, a little tongue in cheek, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, my podcast, it's called Writers, Reads, and Reviews, and it's going to launch initially on Spotify. I've already lined up several people, including yourself, as a fellow author, and I'm definitely going to, you know, have Wendy if she's available and others. I want to do artists and writers, and especially folks that have worked with writers like Wendy, if you're an artist. And it's going to be just a cozy conversation, you know, just talking also about what we're reading and what we're reviewing and sharing little tidbits like that. But yes, I do read local authors, indie authors, and then I give reviews. And when you're at the website, you can click on the book and it'll take you to where you can buy it and read more reviews. And I just feel like I call it the creative collective, you know, Facebook creative collective, we really need to, that's kind of where all my energy came from originally. And we really just need to keep supporting each other.
Oh yeah, I agree with that, man. That's why I love that about you, that you're very supportive of other people and what they do, and you can whenever you can help them, you can. So I love the fact that you're doing that.
Thank you.
But I also love for like one of my favorite authors, I always love to know like what they're reading and maybe where they got some of their inspiration from. And on your website, you have something called your favorite summer reads. A couple of them I wanted to list. One was called Beach Read, The Last of the Moon Girls, and you had We Measure the Earth Through Our Bodies and The Island of Missing Trees. So you have a very eclectic taste, it seems like.
Yes. And you know, that's Bookshop, I think, where I list my books
Okay.
for sale too. But yes, so what I do I'm a bookshop.org affiliate, and that's an alternative to going to Amazon, which some people appreciate. And also a portion of those sales go towards the Curious Cat Bookshop in Winston, Connecticut, which is indie owned, woman owned, and she's had a history in publications of books. So it's a really cool shop if you're downtown Winston. It's on Main Street. But so what I do is I'll look at books that are kind of that are either like in New York reviews, New York Times reviews, or other people are mentioning and so on, and I'll put them there in different categories. And you'll see I also have the Auntie Sherry Library.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. What is that?
Yes. So once upon a time, had a very young niece. She's now going to be 22 next year. And she picked up reading and devoured books like I did as a kid. She will have, I don't know, Wendy, like if you're familiar with, you might have like more than 2 or 3 books open at one time. And she doesn't put a bookmark. She would just lay them down like this.
Oh, open them
They're
up.
all over the house. So I took her to some, you know, she needed books for reading, blah, blah, blah. And as I realized she really loved reading, I was like, well, I want to help her build her own library, because as a kid, I didn't have book of the month or, you know, the standard titles a lot. Basically my mom, and I put this a little bit in the stories about my life on my website, because I have inspiration that I reference, but my mom would give me either money when I helped her at the fairs, like Bethlehem Fair, or because she had a jewelry business for a while. or I'd go to tag sales and yard sales, and I'd go right to the book box because every place has a book box, and you go through and I pick out very different titles. So I was reading books I don't think anyone, my contemporaries were reading at the time. And I was like, well, I want to help her build her library. So what I do is I will, her grandfather and grandmother, my parents have passed. Her great grandmother on my father's side has passed, his mom, and yet they were all avid readers. So what I've done is take books that either I owned, I loved, they owned and loved, or I know that they loved an author, like her great grandmother loved Frank McCourt. So I got, for instance, Frank McCourt's, I think it was Teacher Man, because she wants to be a teacher someday. And she's actually going to school for that now. And I write a note in the cover. This was your great grandmother's favorite author. Her first book she read by him was Angela's Ashes. I took her to the Warner to see him speak in person on stage. And so now she's collecting all these books from me with a note inside. And then I recently had stickers made up that say an official Auntie Sherry Library collection. And then I got a legacy sticker if it's related to one of the relatives that's not me. And so now she's building this library. And so now I've extended that to the bookshop.org site. This is an Auntie Sherry library selection. So you could build your own.
I want to go back to the Curious Cat bookshop. Several weeks ago, I wanted to go hiking in the Winstead area, and I went past the Gilson Cinema, and I said, wait,
Yes.
there's a bookstore. I slammed on the brakes, parked the car. I went in there. So I love bookstores, and I love local bookstores. Like there's a great one in the old Saybrook area where I met John Grisham. I can't remember the name of the I'll think of it later. But it was great because with John Grisham, he was touring all the independent bookstores and all the local bookstores, and then every bookstore he went to, he would have a local author from that area.
That is very cool.
R.J. Julia, that's the name of the place.
Okay.
It's a great place.
That's a lot of work. Too.
Yeah.
That's
That is a
amazing
lot of
work.
Yeah, but when I went to this place and I went over by the bathroom, I said, wait a minute, I know her, and it was you. And I guess I just missed one of your you did a poetry reading there with several other authors, several other poets.
Yes.
I can't remember the poet's name, but he was the headliner at the last touring.
David Henry.
That's it. David Henry was there with you.
Yes.
I said, wait, I know him, I know her. And I was talking to the owner. She's a great woman.
Yes.
And we were talking about the history. She's going to be on the show sometime soon.
I think her name is Stacy.
I think so. Yeah. I have her card upstairs, and I was doing my research on her, and I know that she's an author as well. She has a big history behind her, and she's worked with authors that worked with so many other bigger. She's got a really interesting story. And I said, I'd love to have you on the show, and she has I think a whole section of just local authors, if I remember correctly. And I saw a couple.
She's very supportive of local authors, and that was the second kind of big poetry night she had. And I love that, the thing with poetry is, one thing I'm learning, I should say, in terms of promoting my work, is I'm not trying to sell people on poetry as a genre. I'm not trying to get people to just embrace the whole genre, because I think poetry has a sort of a history of, I don't want to say snobbish, but it can feel a little off-putting to people. It's not always easy to understand and read, but there's so many wonderful things that have been done with it in terms of styles and things. And I really just encourage people. I say, look, if the word poetry makes you cringe, or if you run to it.
Yep.
I feel my work is relatable, and it's to a degree conversational, and certainly in Scenes and Sonnets, we're talking about things people can relate to: cemeteries, sunflowers, butterflies, birch trees. So
that's because you're personable. Sharon, you're personable. And
oh my gosh, I love this.
You have to be personable. If you're not, it's off-putting. And once people are off-put, it's too late. You already lost them.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I know at the Curious Cat, when we did that event, I knew pretty much all the poets, because Jack Sheedy was there.
Oh yeah.
And Joe, and I can never pronounce his name correctly. I'll get it to you. But he goes by Joe the Poet. Wendy Haller was there, David Henry, and I.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually just it was just a wonderful group. We had other people's visiting too, other people visiting as well, but the readers, it just was like a really good, you know, like everybody was just all relatable and all deep and all like there was emotions, and it was like,
Yeah, the energy was good.
oh,
That's what you,
energy was so good.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what attracted me to you the first time I saw you. When you were up on stage, your poems are great, but the way you presented them on stage really caught my interest. And I'm not the only one to say that. So that
Oh, thank
Wendy
you.
is definitely right. You're so personable, and you make the listener pay attention. You're like, whoa, what's this? And that's why I think it's sad because, like you said, people might hear the word poetry, like, oh, I hate poetry. But if they took the label off, they'd be like, I actually enjoy this. This is good. It's just, I think some people are put off by the label of like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
like poetry. What's that's for snobs, you know? Just, but I love poetry. I love everything. That's, I mean, I think some of my
Thank
tastes. I
you.
can go from horror to poetry to anything, and just from
Yeah,
classical to metal and any type of art. I love it all. There's so many
that's
different things.
cool.
Like, I'm not gonna just put the blinders on only like one thing. There's so many different things that I love, and
Hmm.
I have very eclectic taste, just like you. And like I said, you're probably one of the first people I saw at the open mic when I hosted it several years ago, and you definitely caught my attention. And that's why
Thank you.
we've been in touch ever since.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm
I
really,
appreciate that.
uh,
I I miss the open mics. I know they stopped doing them, but I will say that it's opened me up to going to other places,
yeah.
right? I don't know. Wendy, do you have like a favorite bookstore or favorite sort of creative place you go to where you are?
Well, we used to have the Barnes and Noble, but they've closed so many since
Oh,
2020.
yeah.
So unfortunately, there's so many of them that have closed.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that I've been to recently. You know, I think it was 2021 is when it closed. The
Mm,
one that we had local. But yeah, I used to love going there. I mean, because they had areas where you could just sit and
yes,
just read and just sit, you know, have coffee, tea, or whatever.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what's making me mad. A couple of the new Barnes and Nobles, they just opened one in Meriden, Connecticut, and there's another one they opened up. I can't remember where, but they got rid of the cafe. And I said, why'd they get rid of the cafe? And one of the managers said, well, we really don't make money. But I said, that's really the only reason I used to go there was to grab a tea. And it was funny because I used to love Borders. When Borders, I was there at least
yes.
5, 6 times a week. It was across the street from the other Barnes and Noble in Farmington. I went there all the time. When that first came out, they had events like a movie night on Tuesdays. They had bands on Fridays. They had whatever poetry night on Saturday. I mean, every night there was something going on, and it was such a great place. And even the managers, I became friends. I went there so often. They're like, we encourage people like you. We encourage reading. We want people like you to come here. We might not make money on this, but you're here. You're looking at books, and that just makes me happy. And I loved it. And unfortunately, as Wendy said, more and more of these places are going under. But I found a couple places, little coffee shops. Like, I like the what's it called? The Birdhouse. It's in I think the Weathersfield area. Then there's another
Oh,
one, the Loaded Goat in Naugatuck. That's a great place.
go.
Yeah, it's got some crazy names, but there's some really good. And then there's a Rebel Dog in Plainville,
Okay.
and so there are some good ones around, but mostly the bookstores are gone. But I like the little coffee and tea shops. That's where I go, and I'll just either read my books or get my interviews ready.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, but I love that kind of stuff. That's one thing I'm going to mention or kind of highlight in my podcast is at, I have friends. So I have author friends in France, England, and all
wow,
across the US, right? So for instance, my friend Stacy Dexter is in Arizona and she's a fellow writer. And when I have her on, I'm going to ask people like where do you go to, you know, where do you go when what's your writing process like or what's your research process like? And if you were to recommend a bookstore, a cafe, a library, just to encourage that, because as they're sharing this out to their people and on their websites and social media, they can encourage that area that they're in. You know, I think it's important to foster that because I go to the Bristol Library, then I live in Bristol, Connecticut. Okay. So there's the Bristol Main Library. Then we have a smaller Man Ross Library.
hmm
and Ross Memorial Library. They have free events all the time. And then I go to Avon Free Public Library, actually Bristol and is hosting me February 11th. And then that's a second visit. And then Avon hosted me when Cadence first came out with a group of other authors. They have wonderful, meet author panels. That's where we met actually in Torrington Library in 2019 after you did your book.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating because I can sit there and at no charge, except for the gas to get there, right? I can learn how other writers and other artists are doing their thing, what's working for them, what's not. Some of the best advice I got was because I'm personable, but I don't really like doing outside events. White Memorial Conservation Center and the Main Street Torrington event for Christmas. I didn't go this year. I wasn't really feeling up to it, but I did it the year before. Those two, I'm all for. But I just am not really an outdoor event person. And one of the authors, for instance, in Avon was saying, I don't really like doing social media. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can you not do social media? But she said, if I'm doing something that I don't like, it's gonna come across that it's forced. And then what kind of energy is that? I'd rather put it into, in-person events because that's where I shine, or my newsletter, like Substack, that's where I shine. And I thought, well, good for you, because and that helped me decide kind of after about a year and a half how I want to market my book, what my brand is, where I'm at with things. So I just think anytime you can promote going to local events, local libraries rock, to really just kind of use most of the time, the library events are free, like almost all the time, really. I've yet to pay for one. And the whole point is to, develop that, cultivate that. So anyway,
and I've seen you speak at the Bristol Library at one time.
I'm going to be there again February 11th.
February 11th. And also, I have it written down. I was going to get to that later, but since we're talking about events, I think it's called Soul Sessions on January.
The Soul Session.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So excited, Wendy. Yeah. Our book is going to be in a silent auction prize. I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm going to have a little table. They said I can have a little table. So I got to get back. Bring it in. Okay. Bring it in, Sharon. Bring it in. Okay. I work for the city of Bristol, and I work for a department that handles one of the many things I do and we do is current events that are going on in town. So everybody sends in their event. So I see this event. It's called the Soul Session, and I'm immediately on the site looking into it. So it's Downtown Live, and this is a Arts and Culture Commission program. And we have a regional theater, and it is literally, I'm going to give away I'm not going to give away fully where I am in town, but I can literally, it's at the end of my street. Oh, that's okay. How close this theater is. And it's in a school, a newly renovated school. I didn't know when I moved here that the school would have a theater. So it's a 630 seat theater. It's beautiful inside, very comfy. And I've been to several events, and I went there one day and I said to myself, one day you're going to be on that stage, and it's going to be part of what you're doing. And so fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I see that they're doing open mic after this meet and greet, and they're doing jazz, R&B, neo soul, $35 ticket for a 4-hour event. I don't think you can shake a stick at that. You're going to meet and greet people, you can network, and then they're doing silent auctions. And I'm like, oh, let me see if I can get a pack of books in there and my calendars and all this stuff. So I call, and she says, oh, I'm going to be meeting with the organizer in like 20 minutes. I'll run your idea by her. Next day I get a call back. So not only would we love your package for the silent auction, I was talking to the organizer about you, Maxine Bowden, I think is her name, from Paradigm Arts and Culture, I think it is. And she said, why isn't Sharon going to be on stage as one of the performers? And I was like, all right. Yeah, why am I not?
I'm there.
I'm there. So I'm giving my ticket I just purchased to my sister. Wow, so I'll know somebody in the audience. and I'm going to be on stage. It's like 5 minutes, but I'm actually going to try and recite instead of read. I'm very excited because I
Wow.
want to be hip. And so yeah, so I'm really excited because it's going to be a very, very cool event, and I want more of this in my town. This is my adopted town. I've lived here twice,
Yeah.
and as soon as I could move back here 3 years ago, I did. So
And,
I love this place, and
and
I actually
again,
live
oh,
in the like in the last couple of years, this area was defined as the arts, arts district for Bristol. So
okay. And again, refresh my viewers and refresh my memory because I know it's in Bristol, but where exactly is it and what's the date?
oh, it's the Bristol Arts. It's the theater is called Rockwell Theater.
Yep.
It's called Downtown Live,
Mm-hmm.
and I will get you the web address. I think it's Bristol. I think it's downtownlivect.com. That's their new website. And it's inside the BAMES, which stands for Bristol Arts and Innovation Magnet School.
Mm-hmm.
It's Memorial Boulevard, and there's plenty of off-street parking at the school,
Yep.
and it's very easy to get in and out of. There's also good food to eat around here, and so you can make a whole thing of it. But yeah, so that's January 18th of next year, so just next month, and it starts at 5 p.m.
And what day is that? Saturday, I hope.
Let me check my calendar.
I just want to make sure because I'm hoping that I
Yes,
have that day.
Saturday.
Oh, good. Because even if I work, I get out of work at 1 o'clock. So you will definitely
Yeah.
see two people there.
It's a Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right.
but I'm excited because I'm going to have a copy of each of the Behind the Blue, Cadence, hardcover copy of Scenes and Sonnets. And then I didn't have these in the spring when we spoke, but I have my two 2025 calendars.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Swirl ink.
Oh, nice.
It's Swirl Sketches and a sprinkling of Stardust, which last year I had a Cadence themed calendar as well as a sketch one.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, the last section in Behind the Blue is called Stardust because the book is, moon celestial kind of themed, not too much, but enough. And the last section is called Stardust. So I chose little pick-me-ups, like, just for example, so it's 12 months of light and love. I did it Art Deco style. So all the pages are this color and have an Art Deco kind of style to it. And let me pick a good month here. Hang on. They're all good, but So being your best self often means learning to love what's good for you.
Mm-hmm. I like
Yeah,
that.
that's for me for sure. Because there's a lot of stuff I don't like that's good.
That's a hard one. Right?
Spinach.
As long as you're
It is
having
a hard
fun.
one, isn't it? And then the design for this. So these are sketches that I've drawn myself.
Nice.
And thank you. Part of the doodle art I did, and then I designed the layout. So these are going to be
Those are awesome.
included.
So you do mostly abstract stuff?
I do. I have some that are more, I've done like trees, but they're no tree I've ever seen. This is the most realistic thing I've ever drawn. I love this light bulb with the little bugs around it.
It's abstract and it's
Yeah.
nice. It's if
Thank
that's
you.
what you prefer doing, that's what you're comfortable with, that's what you should keep doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Don't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, I saw some of your other merchandise. I have to say your most genius merchandise is your phone case, just like this. It has a QR code. I love it.
So I found this place on Etsy. So that's the back of my phone. And that's one side of my business card.
That's great.
And I thought, I never seem to have my business card. I don't know, Wendy, if you carry yours with you, but they're always
everybody's always asking me and I have none.
Yeah.
And they're old now, because I was working with the previous poet doing Etsy stuff and we don't do it anymore. So I never updated my card. So that's a good idea. I may actually try doing that.
Yeah, I really like it because so it's the case and then it's the clear case, But what's cool is, so someone could take a photo and it
Mhm.
stays in their gallery, right? And they can share it
Yeah.
out if they want to. Like, I met this wonderful person. Here's her info. Or they can scan the QR code, which takes them to the link tree, which is, then they have it in their phone. And
Right.
I thought, well, then I don't have to really worry about having my cards on me.
Right.
Sharon
So-
Arsego,
have
you
a
are a
lot of
genius.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also have when I do my bookmarks, and I'm gonna have some that are for scenes and sonnets. I'm gonna do postcards, more postcards too.
Mhm.
I did a couple of my designs and handed them out this year, and they were a big hit. So I'm gonna be doing some obviously always just a note to anyone that's doing anything artist wise. You always give credit to everyone that's done their part and name it. So like every photo will have Wendy's credit on it.
Yeah.
You have to share that out. That's professional courtesy and it's the right thing to do. Just a little note.
Yep.
But I'm gonna be where we've already talked about bookmarks and postcards and making them available. I really, just to help promote everything. So
Oh yeah, no, I love that. You were like a merchandising machine. I want to go back to your website because another thing that I love on your website is you have selections from the banned book list, which I love because I think I am against censorship in any type of censorship I'm against. And I can't imagine why some of these books that you have on this list are even considered banned. One is The Prophet by, I'm going to maybe pronounce it wrong. Is it Khalil Gibran?
I believe so, yes.
And then the one I was surprised, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I saw a documentary on
Yeah.
her. She's great. What could possibly be so bad in that book that they would ban it?
So I'm not entirely sure, but I'm also against censorship. And I read that book when I was in college. And when I saw that listed, I'm actually going to the bookshop, my bookshop on bookshop.org now, because that's where they're showing up.
Yeah.
Like I said, I will see what other bookstores are listing for different, reasons like summer reads and things. But then I also watch the news and I look and see what's happening in different places and I'll put them in the bookshelf. And I was really surprised that Toni Morrison's book, I don't know. I honestly don't know what people are thinking when they choose some of these things.
Yeah,
I
well, the other
think
one, oh,
it's
no,
a
sorry.
whole big topic, right?
Yeah,
It's
well,
a
the other
mystery
one I was
reading
surprised.
to them. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I can't understand. If so, like, first of all, nothing should be banned. If you don't like it, you don't have to read it. You don't have to buy it. You don't even have to look at it. Just walk by it and just ignore it. But the other one that I was really surprised at too was the Diary of Anne
Diary of
Frank.
Anne Frank.
Wow, that's considered bad. I don't
Yeah,
understand
it sounds to me like somebody's trying to hide some information about our history. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I would agree 100% because think about it. So this is a very real topic, right? So when you read, you are traveling to other places, you are learning about other cultures, other people than yourselves, if you choose to read those, right?
Hmm.
And the Diary of Anne Frank is a historical piece about a terrible, like horrific time in the world's history.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to make sure everyone knew uh, uh, a witness, at the time to what was going on? I don't understand why you wouldn't want that known. How many times do people say, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat
Repeat
it,
it. I know.
right? And going back to even like medieval times and everything, the people who read were the people who had power because they could, if you don't know any better, you trust the people, who know things, right? Or supposedly know things. It's just,
Right.
I think,
Which can
we
be
should just
quite
be,
scary these days.
Yeah.
yes, I agree. We all need to read as much as we can,
Yeah.
whether it's
Yeah.
poetry or history. I like reading biographies. I
Mhm.
like reading memoirs. You learn a lot about how other people live. It's amazing to me because we certainly don't all live the same way.
Exactly.
No.
And just like even after 9/11, these movies were digitally erasing the World Trade Center. And just because you get rid of it doesn't mean we forget about it. You should put that in there as paying homage to it and remembering it and for what it was.
Yes.
Just and like you said, just because you get, I mean, it was a bad event, it was horrible, it was a tragedy, but you can't just push it to the behind and say, "Oh, don't even think about that. Let's talk about it and make sure it doesn't happen again."
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't
So that
understand.
it does not happen again. That's the key.
Yeah.
Do not let it
Yes.
happen again.
And then when they had the museum in that area and people, oh my God, I can't believe they're celebrating. It's, they're not celebrating, just like we have a Civil War museum, we have a Revolutionary War museum. They're,
So many things.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So many things. Yeah.
It's just a, that's a huge topic I can go on forever about because I get so angry when people, and it's so funny, is the people that are most upset by these things or most quote unquote offended don't even go there, don't even, they read about it somewhere and then they have more time to go on Twitter or
Mm,
Facebook and complain about it. And then you see two or three complaints like, oh boy, we better get rid of this. It's like, why? Two people complained? So it's just the whole thing where I trying to like make everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. And so
no.
don't
No.
just get rid of
Never.
everything. There was a great South Park episode years ago where, no,
Wow, we're running the gamut today.
we are. No, but they were doing a Christmas pageant, and so like, well, we can't do the baby Jesus; it's going to offend the Jews. We can't do this because it's going to offend the Christians. We can't do this. So finally, at the end, they got rid of everything that would offend any type of religion. And at the end, everybody in the audience goes, "Let's go home. This is boring," and they walked out.
I
And that's
know.
what basically they come to is everything wants to become so. I mean, some people want to make everything so generic and so safe
Hmm.
that there's you can't do it. Like even for me when I used to do stand-up comedy, people are like, well, maybe if you became a little bit more generic, you can get like a bigger audience. Like no, I'd rather have that small hardcore audience that really loves me instead of people going, yeah, he was okay.
Yeah,
So
I
I know my
agree.
sense of humor, and my sense of humor is not for everybody, and I really don't care. I know what I do is funny, and there's some people that think that agree with me, other people that don't, but the people that don't, they don't have to listen to me. So that's why,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
But
I
banning,
I feel, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, go ahead. No, it's
No,
just banning
I
books
bet
is,
that's I bet it's the same in any art form, right? So I know in writing, like Behind the Blue, there's some really personal stuff in there. And not everybody that reads it is, like you said, you get to know me.
yeah,
There's some tough things in there that are very real. It's mostly because I have anxiety and depression, although thankfully I will say since it's been 2 years now working on my first book. I started working on my first book. My anxiety and depression has decreased to where it's almost non-existent. There pretty much once a day, I still have a little shock to my system where, my anxiety ramps up for a second, but I don't have it where I'm incapacitated or, and then I can usually explain like, oh, I'm thinking about my parents passing. It's the time they passed. They passed it around the same time in the year. So it's like, okay, that makes sense. It used to not make sense. Those are the times that concerned me.
yeah,
That make logical sense to me. But I'm sure in any art form, you have to think that at some point you're doing it because it's what you need to do. I'm sure photos you're taking, Wendy, or pictures you're taking, it's what you're moved to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I thought of doing. It just came to me. And
Hmm.
like the book that I'm doing on the swans, it's not like I just intended on doing that. I started photographing and these swans started having hatchlings and I
Oh,
said,
oh,
I have to do a book. I have to do a book. It's been emotional. It's been so many things
mm,
because I see things that are tragic, being there all the time. I've had to call a rescuer 3 or 4 times since I've been doing it. One cygnet didn't make it. So,
oh,
there's a lot of things. It's like writers and artists, we get it. We just get it. We get what both of, even though one's doing the writing and the other one is doing either the photography or the illustration, we just get each other because we're doing it for the same type of purpose.
mm-hmm,
It's about the heart, it's about the soul. It's not
mm,
like I don't do it just because I'm doing it for other people, even though that is the end result is for other people. But it's really satisfying something inside of me as well.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, let me ask you
100%.
both. Let me ask you both this because I've interviewed many people, many artists, authors, musicians, and not all of them, but some of them said that they get their most creativity when they're at their the bottom, when they're happy and they become more not apathetic, but they're like, you know what, the creativity doesn't really flow as much as when they're down and out, and that's when they just can't either stop writing their book or can't put that guitar down and write 3, 4, 5 songs. So do you, Sharon, and you, Wendy, do you have the similar experience when you're at your lowest? Like you just mentioned, sometimes you have anxiety, you're writing down, and that's when things will just pour right out of you. And Wendy, is that when you go, let me go take a walk, and you get the best pictures?
Wendy, I'll let you take that
Absolutely.
one first.
Absolutely. I have been through a hell of a year for so
Mm.
many reasons that I wouldn't mention publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And Sharon knows a little bit about it. The sometimes you have to take yourself away from human beings. And for me, doing that is being with the wildlife that I've been with. And it's like I have a video that I can send to you if I can get it to go through by email. I don't know if it will be too large or not. Of the swans coming up to me one day when I was walking by looking for them, and they were looking into my soul. And there was like silence. And all I did was just sit there. I put my camera down
Mm.
and I just sat there with them. And they were just looking right at me. The whole entire family, there was 5 of them. They just
Oh.
stopped and they were looking at me. And I could feel whatever it is that they were feeling, I could feel it. And that doesn't happen
Mm.
often, because there's a lot of people coming through this area, but there was nobody coming through at that moment. And it was just magical. I like it's an experience that you can never describe. You'd have
Mm.
to feel it yourself.
Mm.
Those moments and when I was at my lowest
Mm.
are what pushes me back up. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Mm. Wow, what an experience.
Yeah.
And what about
Wow.
you, Sharon?
So I think you asked me this in the spring, and it sounds familiar. So I've had, as mentioned in the spring interview, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer.
Yeah.
And just a FYI, I had my first 6 month screening and I am all good.
All
So
right. I'm so
few
happy to
Oh,
hear that.
several more to
what a
go,
relief.
but yes, I was really relieved. Um, I think I I find my answer may change a little bit from last time, but I do more writing when I feel moved to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the it doesn't mean I'm in a good place, but it means it has to come out.
Yeah.
And whether so it could be when I'm feeling really great, or it could be when I'm going through something. Um, I do know one of my closest friend asked me several months ago. They've known me for 14 years. They said, which was but after the first husband and since the last husband, just to, they've known me a long time. They said, do you think you would have published if you were, if you were still married? And I didn't even have to, you take your time. I said, I don't need to take my time. I never published when I was married,
Mm-hmm.
either time. And it wasn't until I had a good work-life balance and I could actually dedicate my brain and my craft, or my skill to my craft, put it all together, that I was able to at least publish. A lot of my stuff I wrote over 30 years of writing, and I finessed it as I had life experiences. there are poems in Cadence and even Behind the Blue to some extent. I had a nugget and I was trying to say what I was trying to say, but it wasn't until several years later when I had life experiences, both good and bad,
Yeah.
that we're able to round it out and get the real image and message across. I journal more when I'm feeling kind of icky or I'm going through something, just to get out stuff out of my head. And then sometimes that turns into writing, but I do understand the tortured artist kind of thing,
Hmm.
but I don't want to be tortured to have art come out of it. I
Yeah.
don't want to be a
Yeah,
tortured
yeah.
soul.
I don't really know much about him. I have a question for you though, because I just did an interview with a life coach and she had a great poem by Charles Bukowski. Are you a fan of his?
I don't know him.
Okay.
I don't think I know.
They made a movie of his life called Barfly with Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. The movie was great. I'm not sure how true it is, but it seems like the guy was a mess. But the couple of the poems that she had on her Facebook, and I started reading them because it pertained to what she was doing as a life coach, they were really good. So that's why I was curious.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check him out.
Yeah, Charles Bukowski. The movie, if you want to watch it, is called Barfly with Mickey Rourke. Came out, I want to say, in the '80s sometime because Faye Dunaway was in there as well.
Yeah.
It was a good movie, but yeah, I think he was another one that was a tortured artist, and he wrote for me. I do more stuff when I'm in a good mood. When I'm in a bad mood, I just shut down. I don't want to talk to anybody. I can't think of anything. But then when
Mhm.
everything's going well, it's like, all right, let's do 12 interviews. Let's write a book. Let's do this. Let's host an open mic. Yeah, I'll help you write that screenplay. So then that's when everything, but I'm ready to take on the world when I'm in a good mood. When I'm in a bad mood, I'm just like, I don't feel like talking to anybody. I don't feel like doing
Yeah.
anything. So I'm just, for me,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
the opposite of what
I
some
can
people are.
see that with what you do. I can see that. I can't say that I would be able to do that either, because that's when I'm trying to shut people out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so it's
You
hard to
know,
do an interview and have a great conversation with somebody when you're
Yes,
when you're down in the dumps.
definitely.
Yeah.
my grandma Dolly was my Italian grandmother on my father's side. It was his mom, and she used to hand sew quilts, and she would hand make braided rugs and just anything she could think of. And I spent a lot of time with her. I attribute a lot of who I am to her, to her influence. And I remember her telling me one time, she said, I haven't had anything to show you lately because I have to be, I have to be in a good place. She said, for me, I need to feel like I'm going to give it the respect that the project deserves. And I really love that because, that's another art and that's a craft that she loved. And I still have a quilt she made me. I was 18 years old. I just turned 54. I still use it every day on my couch when I'm snuggled down with my cat and watching TV and stuff. I
Hmm.
mean, she just made quality items, and to have something from her was special. So it meant a lot to hear her say that she needed to dedicate time. If she only felt so, she said the stitches aren't going to come out right. I'm not going to enjoy it. It's going to come out, when they give it to the person, they're going to wear it or hold on to it or, put it up front display. And I want it to be, representative of my care and everything. And I thought, wow, that's like a really good life lesson, that maybe you want to create, but maybe that's not the right time. You need to give it the respect, that it deserves. So I might scribble a line or two and then go back to it when I feel like I'm ready. I mean, I went between Behind the Blue and finishing up Scenes and Sonnets. I haven't really done a whole lot of writing, but I have a book slated for February, so I got to get going.
Yeah. So do you give
I
you
know that feeling, believe me.
I'm sure.
do
I'm
both of
sure.
you give yourself a deadline? Like I know you want yours, Sharon, for Valentine's Day, but for the most part, like if it wasn't for the next book coming out, do you say like, all right, well, I want to get this done by the end of the week, or do you just say I'll just write when I'm inspired? If I write a line and I don't write for another 3 weeks, that's fine. I'll come back to it.
So I have a process where I do a lot of it simmers a lot in
Oh
my
yeah.
head. Okay. I make a list. I'll make several lists and I kind of see where I'm tracking and where I'm going with things.
Hmm.
And just real quick, my next book is called Art of the Breakup.
Yeah.
And it's rudimentary but still very raw sketches and pictures that I've drawn, and it's got uh wording, poetry and things to it, and prose. And I I put it off for a while because if I drew, if I drew the picture and then I tried to write, if I make a mistake, I got to redo the picture and I'm not going to get. So I was trying to figure out because I have a whole image of how the book is going to look. And then I remember that in 2019 on Etsy, I purchased this college kid arranged for my handwriting to become a font in Microsoft Word. So I went back, I got it, I dug it out of my files. I was able to get it on my new computer. It took me maybe an hour to figure it out. And now I'm able to do the sketch, scan it in, and I can mess around with the font and mess around with the spacing. And if I don't like it, I can fix it. So now I'm like ready to hit the ground running.
I love it.
But if I had tried to force it, or I was getting frustrated. I kept drawing and then I'm like, well, if I mess this up with the lettering, what am I going to do? Yeah, I could scan it, but I want to kind of, I had to work it out in my head. It took me a little while.
Yep.
So yeah, I give myself a deadline, but then, I also have to be realistic as well. How about you, Wendy?
Yeah, I mean, doing what I'm currently doing, it depends on a lot of things. Weather can be one of those things.
Yes.
If I have to track the weather to make sure, that's a hit or a miss these days because my God, meteorologists don't seem to know what they're talking about sometimes. So, I may wake up and when I start my day, I'm starting at sunrise and
Oh, wow.
oftentimes I leave at sunset. So by the end of the day, I'm pretty tired. And then I have to usually skip a day or so because I'm almost 60 years old and
Wow.
I don't know. For some reason, my head just doesn't want to believe that. So, and I curtail my diet and all of that so I can keep doing what I'm doing for as long as possible. But, that age thing, you just can't defy it. So I don't really have any set timing of doing certain things. I will, like with any of our books or my books, like the one I did with Sharon, we were supposed to have this out the end of spring. And here we are at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, but things happen. So I try to make dates, but sometimes it just doesn't happen, especially when you have more than one person you're working with.
Yeah.
And I would think too, like with the swan, like you're dealing with, like, this is a specific subject, right? So you're dealing with you're
Right.
working with swans. So obviously they
Mhm.
have a span where they're active and like you said, the babies were out and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, now they've flown away, so I'm currently tracking to find them. I did find some swans, some stray swans that had been at the pond towards the end of their time there. Yeah, because once the original pair have babies, what they call cygnets,
signets,
those
yes.
cygnets have to be ready to get out of the parents' home or life or whatever you want to call it when they're around this age, which is 7 months, if they're healthy. So last week when I went, sadly, they had already left. So I am I've been traveling around I would say around the 20-mile radius looking for them. I'll find them.
Oh yeah. But I can't wait for you to see you find the snowy owls. That's what I love.
Yeah. Well, those are tricky to find. They are tricky. Sometimes you find them because if you see the photographers where you think they are, that's how you know there's one there.
Have either of you heard of the author Greg Iles?
Sounds familiar,
I have.
but
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know anything about, but I have heard.
Okay, now he's a great author, and the reason I bring him up is because he made a comment. Somebody said, well, how do you write your books? He goes, I am going to give the worst advice, but it works for me. He goes, I will sit on a story and just think about it for about 8-9 months. If I have a year date to get it done, he goes, the last month I will just write and write and write, sometimes for 36 hours, and it's usually just one draft, because by the time I start writing, I already know exactly what I want, how it's going to be, because I just let that ruminate in my head and just let it get in. And so when you said that, I was thinking of him, because he goes, it doesn't work for most people, but it works for
Yeah.
me. And I could see how
Yep.
that was, because a lot of times I'll be doing things like that. Like, well, my stories were a little bit different. I already had an idea, but I would just go there. And if I ran, one of the best experience I ever had, and I probably told you this either off the air or maybe in the last interview, was one time I was writing and I was so into it, where I said, I can't wait to see what happens next. And I realized, wait, I'm the one writing this story, because I was just so into it.
Well, there are writers who say their characters make choices and do things that they
Yeah.
didn't, that they do take on a life of their own. I do have a memoir planned. I mean, I've got probably 8 titles ready to go. I also have some spicy poetry that I had to wait for my parents to pass, which was 11 years ago, because I didn't think I could handle that. So, but I'm going to do a memoir about my dad, who, if anyone from Torrington, Connecticut knew Grumpy Soup and Sandwich Shop on Water Street in town there, that was his place. And he was a real character, and I would tell his stories while he was here. And the story, the memoirs are going to be little vignettes. The memoir is going to be little vignettes. And I've actually just started kind of writing down things I want to touch on. But some of it was in his eulogy that I wrote for him and everything. But he was a character in the biggest definition of it. And I mean, so far as he taught himself how to play piano, guitar, banjo, harmonica, organ, and then he wrote in music and sang it and everything. He was just a character in all different aspects. He also had a dark side as well. And I'm writing, looking at the last 6 months or so of his life, when he really let me in and help help manage his care and things, and some of our things. And I remember him saying, he's a big gruff guy. He said, don't wait until I'm gone to tell my stories. I said, Dad, I can't, they're too good. But now, and he'd be tickled to know that his kid is writing a book about him. So the working title is, because his nickname was Grumpy, Growing Up Grumpy. Are we having fun yet?
What a great
Are we
title.
having fun yet? Because that was one of his sayings.
I love it.
Yeah. If I could, can I read a piece from Behind the Blue?
You can, but please, before you do that, do you
Yeah.
have any spicy poetry ready?
Oh my, I could.
You have to.
I could. I guess I opened myself up for that, huh? Let me think about where. Oh wow. Give me a second.
There's no better place to debut that than on the Claus Corner.
I didn't actually consider that when I brought it up. But I think I do, because I keep a file. Now, mind you, I changed, what do you call it? I changed computers.
Well, if you can't find it, it just means you can come back next time.
Yeah, I think I'll have to. But the working title for the book used to be Peel Me Down. So maybe that gives you an idea. It's like it needs a brown paper bag cover for some of the poems.
That's a nice way to put it.
I call it Poems for Lovers, because at least it covers a multitude of things. So so from Behind the Blue, which is my second book before Season Sonnets came out. This is the one I finished while I was recovering from my surgery this spring. So I wrote a prologue poem, and so I'm going to read that because it kind of sets the mood for the book. And then I'm going to read one other piece to kind of, because the book moves from darkness into light, which is, life. Sometimes you got to work through the dark stuff, and there's shades of gray right before you get through. And so the sections are called the Nightshade, which also is a name for some poisonous, has some poison in different like Gothic and stuff references. Moonbeams, Bella Luna, which is a reference to my Italian background for beautiful moon, and Stardust. And then the prologue and epilogue are poems as well. So this is the prologue. I wrote this poem without a title, and then I was researching moon stuff, and I found out that the moon is often referred to as the maiden, the mother, and the crone.
Oh,
And so when I read my poem to myself and then I saw that, I thought, well, that's the perfect title. So this is what I came up with. The maiden, the mother, and the crone. The full indigo moon lounges elegantly in a muted gray sky. Muted gray as cobalt creases form in the recesses of her mind in shades of azure against the morning light, light that reflects in her ancient sapphire eyes, eyes that are handmaidens bathed with their tears, tears shimmering, remembering, reflecting inward, inward towards an old soul still searching, searching, intently seeking, hopefully finding, finding with capable hands that know how to carry burdens, burdens, babies, worries, endearments, loves, and losses. Losses gained while reaching to embrace, embracing and engulfing massive stillness, a stillness that is the whole of the universe, the whole of a universe from pinprick precision to infinity, infinity upon infinity, defining the depth of her memory. Memories marred by an aquamarine mood, the mood of a burgeoning, tired heart, a tired heart infused with gaping grief, grief dancing with a swelling sadness, a sadness gently lifted by the fullest of indigo moons, lounging elegantly in a muted gray sky.
wow.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
like
Love
that.
it. Well,
Yes,
do you have another one that you wanted to read? Or
I do,
okay,
because
let's do
we're
it.
coming to the end of the year. And this book is very, very much, it could almost be autobiographical in some way, although it wouldn't be chronological order. And in the book, if the poem doesn't have a title, this time what I did is I made the first line bold, so you know that that's the beginning and kind of kicks it off. And I just feel this one starts with talking about that it's about the year ending, and for me, you know, a lot of this was some of this was processing my recent breakup a few years ago. So
Hmm.
this is me. It starts with, this is me bidding the year goodbye. This is me thanking the last 365 days for delivering the painful realness I deserved, and in the way that it did, for knowing it wouldn't have come to me otherwise, for knowing the bracing cold water it threw in my face was the exact and jarring wake up call I needed, for knowing it had to be a clean break. This is me thanking the course of the planets for providing additional strength to my bones. This is me thanking the moon and the stars for the proof that my instincts were in peak form. This is me thanking them all for guiding me with a deep, abiding love, an abundance of unwavering self respect, and eventually peace beyond my understanding. This is me bidding the year goodbye while thanking the cosmos for the strength to not only withstand the resentment, the contempt felt for me, but also the failings of those who were and who remain forever lacking.
All right. Love it.
That's an end of the year poem.
Yep. And I think that might be an end of the year, end of the interview poem too, 'cause I love that. That's a
Perfect.
great way to end the show. But before we go though, you two have a lot going on. I want to talk about, I want you to do some plugs, and we're going to have everything on the screen while we're talking. So Wendy, first, where can people find you and what's next for you?
They can find me on Facebook. That's where a majority of my work goes for now, on the Silenced Photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And my work is ever changing. So it's right now my focus is the Swan book, but I have a few children's books that I've been working on for the past year as well. And actually one is supposed to be coming out this month, hopefully, but it may not it may not end up coming out until the beginning of the year. So once that happens, I will start advertising it on my Facebook page.
Yay,
It's about a
congrats.
bee, and it's all illustrated. Yep. And my next book is a children's book, is about a dragon, a purple dragon, and a little girl.
Ah,
Ooh. So one of my dad's songs that he sang for me ever since I was little was Puff the Magic Dragon. So I dig that.
I was a fan
Yeah,
of Peach
it's
Dragon
awesome.
as well. With
Yes,
Helen
I
Reddy.
mean, yes, I love Pete's Dragon. It's, yeah, who doesn't love a dragon?
right?
Exactly.
Oh, so for me,
Yeah, so
probably the easiest thing would be for people to go to Linktree. So it's linktr dot double E as in Edward, then the / Sharon Arsego. You can see the spelling of my name on the screen there. But in case I've had an issue recently with the Facebook link, so I'm just gonna say my Facebook is Sharon Arsego artist. I think it says indie artist. That's my professional one. If you put in my name and to come up, just choose the one that's, has the artist mentioned. And I'm on there quite a bit. It's just easier than spelling out Swirl Ink publications, but
mhm.
that's optional too. Those are probably the best things. But yeah, I love people to get into that Swirl Ink orbit and be a part of the updates that are happening and where I'm going to be, what I'm doing, my blog. There's some really good pieces I wrote, and originally people get to know me as a writer. So I put the influences in my life, which include my late father, my late grandmother. Actually, since I was a kid, I had a older gentleman pen pal. It wasn't creepy at all, I promise. And he was wonderful, Mr. Wallach, and he actually really encouraged me with wordplay and puzzles and things and cards he wrote me. And so, I talk about different people that were really influential. And so you get a lot of that cool inside stuff rather than having to go dig for it. It would come to you if you sign up.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, on your website. Also I'm scrolling down and said, wait a minute, there's my podcast. So thank you very much for
Yes.
putting me on there. Our interview that we had, our first interview we had. And also I want to thank you reading your last book. You had a great thank you about me in there. And I really do
Yes.
appreciate all the support that you've given me.
You're
And as I
welcome.
said, all
Thank
the
you.
support you've given all these local artists. And you're just, as Wendy said, very personable, an excellent writer, and I think that it's a great combination because people read that, and then when they see you, they like it even better because they see what a great person you are, and they're like, Sharon, I got to read more of her stuff. So it's a great combination. So I really do
Thank
appreciate
you.
both of you coming on the show. Before we go, though, you told everybody where they can find you and what's next. Is there anything else that we missed that you do want to talk about before we go?
I don't think so. We got where, at least for me, where you can find me online
Yeah.
and the upcoming event. The big one is January 18th. I'll be on for 5 minutes, but I guarantee you it's going to be a fantastic event in Bristol. Again, Bristol, Downtown Live,
Yeah.
CT for Connecticut.com. You can find all kinds of things there that they're having, but the soul session is the one. And then February 11th, I'll be at the Bristol, Connecticut Library on Main Street for an author, just me evening. So that'll be cool. But no, I think that pretty much covers everything for now.
Right. I do want to add one thing. So I'm kind of disappointed. As you know, I met you hosting the open mic in Torrington.
Yes.
I had not realized, and I guess they didn't know at the time, I hosted the last open mic they had. If I knew that, I would have went out in a blaze of glory. I mean, I had a great time. We had the drunken sailor sing along like we always do. I had fun, but when I heard that, it was my friend Hal who told me because he's in Torrington. He goes, "Did you know they got rid? That's not going on anymore." So what are you talking about? And then I talked to Conrad, and I found out they couldn't get the funding for it anymore, or something like that. But I love that place. I hope they have. I mean, I know they have other ones, but I hope they reopen it in the Torrington area as well because it was mostly the same crowd that I saw every time I went there, and they were great.
Yes.
You mentioned David Henry, Jack Sheedy,
Yeah.
some of the other people.
Patricia Martin
Yes.
Mason, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. And
The
Frank
Connecticut
Fratelli.
poet. Yeah.
And so there's so many great. So I'm hoping that they start that near. But for all these people that want to or are creative and want to do some networking, just meet some great people and support other artists, go to these open mics. It's always a good time. I'm never ever bored at one of these.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Wendy, Sharon, it was so great to have you on the show. And please come back. I cannot wait to read this book, but also I'm already looking forward to your next book.
And I'm looking forward to the swans.
Yes, the swans
Yes,
and the
thank
owls.
you. I will
And the-
advertise it when it starts to.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. And please save a
Thank
snowy
you
owl
for
for me.
You have to nickname one Rich after him when you find him. 'Cause he gives a hoot.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was, but
I don't know either.
we'll just leave it at that. That wraps up the latest episode of the Claus Corner. A huge thanks goes out to indie author, poet, and artist Sharon Arsego, as well as the one known as the silence photographer, Wendy Tobin, for taking time out of their extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. Another huge thanks goes out to editor extraordinaire John Bristol, the award-winning Element Productions, for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Rob Bull and Joseph Timothy Quirk for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations, as well as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. A big thanks also goes out to Al Coles for airing my show on his local cable station to help me expand my audience. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.
From the frenetic mind of author Rich Sear. 5 terrifying short stories, now available in one collection. Confessions of a Frenetic Mind. 5 tales of blood-curdling terror, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.